Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another TheeSportsScoop video. Today, we are bringing you another 7-round team mock draft as we bring you the Kansas City Chiefs, who have 2 first-round picks after trading away star receiver Tyreek to the Miami Dolphins, acquiring pick number 29 in the draft. And obviously, they have a lot of capital here, and obviously scary because they're already contenders. But they have a ton of picks. I believe they might have the most draft picks this year. I believe they have 8. I might be wrong, but they have 29, 30, 50, 62, all 4 picks that can be impact players, can be starting caliber players. We know how good they've been with later round picks. Obviously, Creed Humphrey, namely being the main guy who they obviously were very, very lucky to get. Went into the league, became one of the best centers. But quickly, before we get into the stream, I want to promote our coverage of the draft this Thursday. So currently, this will either be posted on most likely this will be posted on Tuesday. We are going live on Thursday. If you guys are fans of the NFL draft, you obviously know when it is. We will be having live draft coverage throughout round 1, and we will also be having some pre-draft coverage. The stream will start hopefully around 7 to 7:15 p.m. Eastern, barring any technical difficulties. But if you guys can tell, and as we've been saying, we have been putting so much work into this stream. We have been making graphics, making it like an ESPN-like stream. We'll be having graphics going up. We're going to be having interactive content. We're going to be talking to the chat, and that's what mainly the point is, to go live before the draft. We're going to be going over our big board, going over top 10 positional stuff, and obviously just going over who we think will be picked when. So if you guys are fans of the NFL draft, make sure you come tune in. We will be talking to the chat. You can just stop in and say what's up. And it'll be 4 hosts, me, Serge, Dylan, and Charlie, all in person. It's going to be a ton of fun. So do make sure you stop by. We've been preparing for it. But without further ado, with that said, let's get into the mock draft. All right, so this is the draft has already been. I've already done it. But here we have the picks that they have. Also, guys, make sure you subscribe, follow us on social media down below at TheeSportsScoop. But at number 29, their first pick, we had them attempt to fill the void that Tyreek Hill left with a bigger receiver in George Pickens out of Georgia. Definitely a draft riser recently. A guy who at the beginning of the draft process was one of arguably a top 10 pick, then fell into the 3rd, 4th round, and now is rising up to the late 2nd, and I believe he will be a first-round pick, but very talented receiver. I think fits this scheme that the Chiefs want, and even extends it a little bit. That might not be the right word, but even expands what they'll be able to do on offense. Obviously, a very explosive player downfield, very, very big, a guy who can make contested catches. Obviously, we know he tore his ACL. So definitely a little bit of questions there, but kind of came back this year and looked good. And a guy who I think is one of the not one of the few guys. That's definitely not true because there are a lot of guys, but I think he's one of the highest potential receivers in this class. I will not deny that. I also do think he has the lowest floor. I do think that he could be drafted and end up not being the boom player that the Chiefs want. But that being said, I do think if you want a player to pan out, draft him to the Chiefs. He'll go, obviously, with Patrick Mahomes, one of the, if not the best quarterback in the league. And then, obviously, you'll have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he'll have Travis Kelce next to him, and he can form hopefully another trio like Tyreek Hill, Kelce, and Mahomes have. But I really, really like the pick of George Pickens. I think a guy who will make an impact, a guy who can be, if he can be coached, he has a lot of traits that can put him into that next level, put him into elite receiver, and he has the build for it. His attributes are very, very intriguing. So I would definitely like the pick here for the Chiefs. And again, they could go take him at 30. And I wouldn't be surprised he might be there at 50, but I doubt he would be. But I'm a big fan of George Pickens. Then we'll go down a little bit to where we had them. They have back-to-back, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try and trade one of these picks to maybe trade up in the draft and get a more elite receiver, a more kind of touted receiver besides George Pickens. But I had them go at 30, go Roger McCreary, cornerback out of Auburn. Kyler Gordon was there also, who I actually like more than McCreary, but I ended up going with Roger McCreary simply for the scheme fit. I think his size and build fits more of what this Chiefs secondary wants, especially down the stretch in the playoffs. More of a big a little bit better of a tackler, but again, very good in zone coverage. He's a very much all-around cornerback where I think Kyler Gordon strives, and we saw at Washington, strives a little bit more in zone coverage, which I don't love with the Chiefs, but I think it would still work. I think either of the players is kind of interchangeable. I ended up going with McCreary. We had Kyler Gordon go to the Cardinals in the last mock draft. Make sure you go check that out. So I thought, let's switch it up. Let's go McCreary. I still think would be a great pick and definitely wouldn't be an upset if they were to take him over Kyler Gordon. I'm sure a lot of people have McCreary as a better cornerback than Kyler Gordon, but definitely a guy who's kind of been falling a little bit, was kind of a lock as a first-round pick, and then ended up falling a little bit. But again, it's very funny. It's very stacked receiver and cornerback class, very deep cornerback class, and very good at the top as well. So it's a very, very well-rounded corner class. I think the Chiefs have a need at corner, and I think they'll go and hopefully get their Marcus Peters-like player. And again, another thing with McCreary, I definitely see him as kind of an aggressive, very good kind of zone man-to-man coverage guy. So I had them go with him at 30. Not too much of an explanation there. We know who McCreary is. Then at 50, I had them continue a secondary with Tyrann Mathieu's future not decided, and I don't think he'll be going back to the Chiefs. And I had them go with Jalen Petre out of Baylor. Definitely a smaller size guy, and will most likely at the next level, I think, might start at safety, but I would predict he'll go into a slot coverage role. But nevertheless, he can play both and still be listed as a safety. But really liked him at Baylor. His ball skills are one of the best in the draft. I would argue the best, and I could see him going to the league and being a complete ball hawk, being a guy who has the most interceptions next year, who has a knack for the ball, and I think that's great for the Chiefs, a defense that thrives off giving their offense the most time on the field, and I think Petrie could be a guy like that. Obviously, no Tyrann Mathieu, but I think a good start. Really like him to pair up with Juan Thornhill, and then again, a guy who offers versatility to a secondary that could use it. Could go into that slot role, could go. I don't think he's more of an ex-Apex corner, but definitely a big fan of Jalen Petre, a guy who rose a lot. That's the right word. I said it right the first time. Rose a lot in the Senior Bowl. We did film analysis on it, and we were like, wow, who's this? And obviously big fans of it, and it's only been uphill from there. So I'm a big fan of Jalen Petre. Then at 62, my favorite pick of this one so far, and that's Kenneth Walker out of Michigan State. I think he'd be a first-round pick. He's my RB1 on my big board. Massive fan of this guy as a downhill runner. I think he offers all of the attributes that the elite downhill runners in the league have now. Speed, size, bulky player, just like Nick Chubb, just like Dalvin Cook, just like Saquon Barkley, the elite downhill runners. Obviously Derrick Henry, but he's more of a physical back. I love Kenneth Walker here, and I think a lot of people are like, well, what about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? I still think he would be utilized, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire, unfortunately, is much smaller, didn't pan out how the Chiefs wanted him to, was very promising, but then, obviously, as I said, didn't end up panning out. So I am a big fan of going with Kenneth Walker here. I think he turns out to be that RB1 and adds another dimension to, again, I think an offense that could use an efficient running game. So I'm a big fan of that pick there. Then at 94, we have another faller, Myjai Sanders, edge out of Cincinnati, very talented edge. I would project to be more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. He's a little bit more slim than, the Aiden Hutchinsons, the Kayvon Thibodeaux, but very good, very speedy. You look at kind of the top, finesse rushers, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Myjai Sanders is right in there, Nick Bonito, kind of those guys. Again, a Nick Bonito, another guy I could have taken earlier, but I was waiting on Myjai Sanders to fall, and he did. Big fan, obviously, the Cincinnati defense was elite this year, a big reason why they were shock the college football world and were able to make it into the playoffs. But I'm a big fan of Myjai Sanders. I think he'll be a steal here, a guy who was arguably a first-round pick at the beginning of kind of this draft process, the beginning of people formulating their big boards and their mock drafts, but now falls to 94. So big fan of that pick there. I think the Chiefs get, off the bat, 5 very effective picks. I think 5 starters, in their top 5 picks. And then we move down to 103, where I had them take Rasheed Walker, offensive tackle out of Penn State. Another guy who I'm a big fan of. I think in terms of in the run game and in the pass game, offers a lot. Obviously not too much there for Rasheed Walker. Can't say too much for a lack of kind of watching his film. But I do think, and what I've seen from him is his length definitely offers a lot. If we click on his profile here, obviously 6'6", big offensive tackle, 312. So even a little bit slim, and I know obviously 312 pounds, you're like, how could that be slim? But you look at Evan Neal, you look at Trevor Penning, you look at Daniel Falele, a little bit more skin, a little bit more slim, a little bit more kind of polished. And I like Rasheed Walker there as kind of a backup option. Then we have them go another Cincinnati defensive player, and that's Darian Beavers out of out of Cincinnati. I was a big fan of Darian Beavers in the Senior Bowl. You kind of watch him. He's a guy who was covering receivers, covering running backs, and I think that's what they could use a lot. You got Nick Bolton last there as kind of the quarterback of that defense, a guy who can play call, can play call. Very, very good tackler. I think Nick Bolton's arguably one of the best tacklers in the league already. I was a huge fan of him coming out of Mizzou last year, and they got him. I think he was their first round pick. And then I think Darian Beavers is that coverage linebacker that they need. So I'm a big fan of Darian Beavers there. I think, again, another really, really value pick. And I think a big need on that defense is a guy who can cover the tight ends that the Chiefs will face upcoming, and obviously in a very good division. So I think having two young, good linebackers who can play off each other well will definitely benefit them. And I think we've seen that benefit teams like the 49ers. I think is a prime example with Fred Warner and, Greenlaw and obviously, all the other linebackers that they've had there. So I'm a big fan of Darian Beavers. Then we go to 135, another, definitely a faller in the draft, and that's Haskell Garrett out of Ohio State, another guy who was very highly touted going into this process, one of the top inside defensive linemen, and has fallen all the way to 135. I think he's kind of that classic run stopping guy. If we look at his size, again, 6'2", 300 pounds, a very, very, very good. And I think, is kind of just one of those imposers on the defense, a guy who's very hard to control in one-on-one situations, can get to the quarterback, can get to the running back. And I think he's kind of that big, imposing defensive lineman you can put on that defensive line that I think has struggled quite a bit. Again, you pair him up with Chris Jones, that would be scary. And I think, again, Haskell Garrett's kind of a guy who you can put in. Him and Darian Beavers are two guys who could potentially be starting guys at the next level, and you're getting them late, past the 100s. And then they don't have a pick for almost 98 picks. And then at 233, they get Ben Brown, inside offensive line at Ole Miss. I'm not going to pretend like again, this was a guy who I'm not very informed on. Again, will most likely be a backup and not much there. Then at 243, I had them take Peyton Hendershot out of Indiana. Again, not very informed on him. Kind of was one of the tight ends that was there. I'm not going to pretend like I know. But I like the pick. I think they need tight end, they don't need tight end. I think they need a backup guy. And then again, we've seen offenses run several tight end sets, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs do that. So you go and get him to potentially pair up with Kelsey or be the backup. At 251, though, I had them go Mikael Wright out of Oregon. Very big fan of him, and Verone McKinley, two guys who were kind of the highlight of the Oregon secondary last year. I really like Mikael Wright, a guy who's fallen a lot in the draft process. Not a huge guy, but definitely a very, very good zone coverage slot guy. And then again, if Pitcher decides to be that the safety, you can put Mikael Wright. Again, a guy who I think could be a starter. I know there is their last pick, but in the 7th round. But I'm a very big fan of Mikael Wright, a guy who's fallen a lot, but I think offers a bunch as a corner. And then again, I think very much a value pick for the Kansas City Chiefs there. But that was it for the mock draft. And again, I want to count the picks. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That can't be right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, excuse me, they have 11 first-round picks. I thought they had 8. That has to be not first-round picks. Excuse me, 11 picks in the draft. A ton for the Chiefs. But I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know. Let me know what you think down below, and obviously make sure you tune in to the draft stream. We would obviously be very, very much thankful if you guys showed up. But I hope you guys did enjoy. Kean McDermott, TheeSportsScoop. Let me know what you think down below. Comment any teams you want. Hopefully I'll get them even though the draft's on Thursday. But we'll be pumping out a ton of team mock drafts. So make sure you guys do subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.